Hi, a very good morning. Welcome to another episode of Ask CyberArk, the only podcast focused on answering questions from our customers, partners, and practitioners. Today, for our podcast, we have a guest, Mr. Joe Garcia. Welcome, Joe. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jeff. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. This is a great day. So, a lot of our audience are familiar with you, but some of them are not. For the sake of the folks who doesn't know you, would you like to do a quick introduction of yourself?
Sure, yeah. So my name is Joe Garcia. Again, I'm a DevOps security engineer for CyberArk. I'm actually a part of the PAS programs office team. If you're in Americas or EMEA, you may be familiar with that team. We engage typically on accounts to provide best practices, architectural reviews, even some guidance as to how to develop a successful program in their enterprise. I focus mainly on the automation aspect, as well as our application access manager, providers, as well as our open source products too.
So, Joe, a lot of our audience would have met you from previous events like, our Tech Fest and our webinars, and a lot of them will know you as infamous Joji, right, with your awesome picture, which we're going to show right here. And, a lot of them would be very keen to know, how did this picture come in, and how did infamous Joji came about?
Oh man, let's see. We've got to go back to, how old am I? 2006. So it's like 15 years now. 15 years ago, I guess. I was working in radio for SiriusXM, and the picture actually originated then, and it was 20-year-old me with my hat off to the side because it was cool back in 2006, right? And I was kind of doing that face where I'm doing like the little wink and stuff. No beard at the time, couldn't really grow one quite yet. I was still getting in the facial hair. But that picture started then. And then about, I'd say 7 years ago or so, I updated it to the one that everyone knows today. So that picture's already like 7 years old. But the infamous part came from back then, my group of friends, when I was on the radio show, just kind of stuck the handle to me, and I kept it throughout because, some of the stuff that I was doing, it was making, wasn't really making me famous. It was more of a shock jock radio. So it was more infamous than anything else. So I just grabbed it, ran with it, made it a brand, and here we are today.
So a lot of us would have known you for, your classes at TechFest, teaching people, on REST API, automation. I think the first one I attended was on the password upload utility, which we, affectionately call it the poo. And I think one of the things that a lot of users or a lot of partners were asking in particular, with today, PWA having the ability to do bulk upload of accounts, right? Usage of things like pool is no longer as compelling. Would you like to share what do you see customers using REST API and automation for?
Sure. So, it's bulk uploading is still a huge use case that's in practice today. Despite all of the stuff that we've added into the PWA with accounts discovery, automatic onboarding rules, all of this is available out of the box with the PWA. Some people like a little bit more granular control on the way that they're uploading their accounts. And the REST API really provides them this flexibility. The cool thing is that CyberArk's R&D actually made a tool based around the REST API to help automate the onboarding of accounts. It's actually called the automatic onboarding utility, automated onboarding utility. Well, it's automated, so it's either or, it doesn't matter. But it's out on GitHub at EPV API scripts in the CyberArk org. And it's pretty cool because it takes a lot of the things that were broken in Poo as time went on and Poo didn't keep updated with everything we were doing. It had some great ideas. The ability to create a safe and put permissions on it that then as you're onboarding accounts, if that safe you want it to go into doesn't exist, at least we have a template that we could look back to in order to permission a new safe, create it on demand, and then onboard the accounts into it. At one point in Pooh's life, it broke, and it was a great idea. But in the account onboarding utility, that's what it is. Account onboard utility, not automated onboard utility. But once that came about, R&D was able to remake it using the REST API. So between the ability to create, update, delete these accounts using the account onboard utility, you can now create safes on demand if you give the proper flags. So that's pretty cool. A lot of the ideas that Pooh came up with that maybe didn't make it over to the REST API is there now in our V2 API.
Cool. So let's talk about what are the use cases customers use the automation for, right? You mentioned that it's still widely being used. Account onboarding is one. Would you like to share a couple of other use cases? I believe these are, the use cases are what customers and partners are most interested in.
Of course, yeah. So the use cases really are, they're based around the amount of time it takes a Vault administrator to do something. And that's really the best way to gauge popularity. If you're a Vault administrator and you're doing something on a repetitive basis over and over again, and it's taking you 5 minutes to do that, maybe take 30 minutes to script it out, and now it only take you a couple seconds every time you do that, and you get the time back. So one of the more popular ones, and one that I touch on in my REST API workshop that's going on this year, is the ability to create safes on demand and permission them based on role-based access groups that could be created on the fly in Active Directory, but kind of follow the typical CyberArk pattern of like you have an admins group, you have an auditors group, and then you have your users who are going to be, reading and fetching the secrets and needing to use the secrets. And so in the workshop, we'll create what's called a CyberArk Safe Factory. And it's a cool script that people can walk away with at the end of the workshop. But essentially it's doing that, creating the safe, creating an Active Directory security groups for each role that's established. I even give them a way of being able to add on additional roles later, and we make it in a very modular way, so it's easy. But that's really one of the biggest use cases. If you imagine in your head, when we're adding safe members to a safe in the PVWA, it's a lot of checkboxes that you have to check or uncheck depending on the user. So being able to just establish a role-based access permission set in a script and immediately apply those all the time. Your auditors now are just auditing the script because that's the script that's going to be creating all of these safe members at the end of the day. And it makes it a lot easier for them to control the compliance.
Awesome. So besides safes, do you see other interesting use cases that you'd like to share?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So there was actually one that I built a couple weeks ago using ServiceNow. Really, the coolest integrations that I see with our API is when we tie into other vendors and we work together in some sort of pipeline to create a complete automation delivery to the end user. And so in this case, we were using ServiceNow as the service catalog to be able to enter in catalog requests. In this particular scenario, the customer had asked for the ability to pull the ServiceNow CMDB for all of the servers that the user, the requester who's making the request, has access to. So they can immediately choose from a drop-down list of servers, or if they know a couple letters, type it in and get to where they need to go. And they're basically making a request for PSM access to it. So after that ticket is put in, obviously it goes through an approval process, whether that's to the manager or the InfoSec group. But at the end of the day, if they're approved, a button appears on the ticket when they go back to it to be able to launch a PSM session. And whether that's going through the HTML5 gateway by us popping up a message box with a link in it that they can click, or opening up the window in a new tab, or we're even able to deliver an RDP file that they can download and then launch an RDP session natively on their laptop directly through the PSM. Both of these are options that, with ServiceNow, we have the ability to deliver because we're now utilizing our API from within their solution.
I think that's a very interesting use case. We see one of those in APJ as well. We've got a large high-tech manufacturer. They spent the last 15 years building their own internal workflow. So they have
Nice.
their own internal CMDB. And the users never see PVWA at all. They put in a request for what they want. The manager get a pop-up, approve, and they get a link or button where they click, and you get a HTML5 window to the server that they are trying to connect to. So it's
Yeah,
very
absolutely.
neat. And yeah, I think we will see a lot more of these in the coming years ahead.
Oh, for sure.
Joe, over the years, you have given us a lot of toys. Just wondering, do you have any new development, any new toys for us?
I love that. I've never been told I develop toys, but it makes me feel a lot better. No, yeah, I mean, so I don't really develop things based on, whether it's going to make us money or whatever. If it's going to make your life easier as a Vault administrator or as a developer using our products now, which is what we're about to talk about, my new tool. I just want everyone to understand that it's not as hard as you think, and we can make it a lot easier. We just got to kind of, baby steps, get everyone there. Now, what I have created, Jeff, I actually released it a couple days ago, a new version, version 2. It's called Conceal. Conceal is available on GitHub. It is a tool, like a command line interface, a CLI, specifically for MacBook or for Mac OS. Mainly targeted to developers. And basically, the whole gist behind it is that it gives you a very easy way of interacting with the macOS keychain to store secrets, be able to retrieve secrets using Summon, which is another open source tool by CyberArk. And just an easy way of being able to start security from the developer's endpoint, and that will then follow into the pipeline. So let me give you a quick example if we have some time. So it's all documented here. We can install it over Brew. So that's very easy to do. It comes with Mac OS. And then we can add a secret, get a secret. We can list the secrets we've added with Conceal to use with some, or we can remove a secret out of our keychain. And usually to do something like this, you have to open up keychain access, log in, create a new password and entry, and then it becomes confusing. What's the account? What's the name? What does this all mean? So I just oversimplified it for everyone. So what I do is I don't like CLIs such as Docker or AWS. Anytime I log into them, they drop a plain text file on my file system with the access key ID in plain text, or my login credentials to Docker Hub in plain text. And so what ends up happening is I'm basically giving attackers an easy entry into my development environments. So by putting all of these secrets into the keychain and then using Summon, I can start to inject the secrets using the environment variables rather than having them write down to my local file system the plain text secrets. So let me go ahead and just show you Conceal. So I've already got it installed, and you can see the help is pretty thorough. All I have to do is Conceal or Conceal-H, and I can get all the information that I need right here. So as far as what I already have loaded in my keychain, I can do Conceal list, and there we go. It immediately pulls back all of the accounts that I have in there. And you can see I have a lot of different accounts than just AWS and Docker, things like that. So this would essentially be what a developer would be utilizing in their source code, and then in their source code referencing environment variables, since these would be injected with Summon. And then as this flows along into the dev pipeline, the staging pipeline, the production pipeline, we can switch out the keychain access easily to be a different secrets backend, such as Conjure Open Source, the dynamic access provider. And we're not having to make any code changes because the developer has been doing this since the initial testing locally on their endpoint. So they don't need to go back now that they're in the dev pipeline and start changing code to work with the security tools that are going to be introduced in the pipelines. So just quickly here, if I go to my .zshrc file, I'll show you kind of what I'm doing. All right, way down at the bottom, I have all of these aliases here. And if we take a look here, you can see anytime I type AWS to access the AWS CLI, I'm calling summon. I'm bringing in my secrets.yaml file, which has a line referencing the variables in my keychain access. And they're being injected as environment variables only to the AWS CLI. Nothing else in my environment, nothing else on my laptop can see these environment variables and their values. Summon is taking control of that AWS process and injecting in the environment variables. And for as long as that command takes to process, so if I'm looking at AWS EC2 describe instances, that happens in a millisecond. That's the amount of time that the secret's in memory before someone dumps it. So now, instead of having them in plain text until I decide to log out of either Docker or AWS, and then finally it removes that JSON file, it's only hitting memory for milliseconds. It's not even getting written to the file system. And you can see I do it for other things as well. So I use Summon a lot in my environment to do different things in a secure fashion. But if we were to take a look at how this is, let me just go ahead and cat out my secrets.yaml file. This is what Summon uses. You can see I have my access key ID and then the name that it is in the keychain access. And this will get injected if I do something like AWS EC2 describe instances, and it'll turn back. It's pulling it from keychain, sending it across to AWS, and then it's going to bring back all of my description of all of my instances that I have running right now. So you can see all of this information came back. I never had to give credentials. You know, if we ls.aws, there's a config there. So let's bat that AWS config. There's no access key ID in there. There would be access key ID, secret access key, and it would be plain text what those values were. So we've already secured the developer endpoint, which is now an attack vector with all of them working remotely from home and not having the bubble wrap around them that they did in the office when they were working in their little development teams and their cubicles and things like that. We were able to control the environment they were working from. Now we don't have that control anymore with them being remote. Sure, we've got VPN that we can make them connect through, but it's not going to stop them from walking to Stack Overflow, copying and pasting some source code, and possibly leaking hard-coded secrets.
Thanks, Joe. This is great. Is this available for free to everyone?
This is available for free to everyone. It's actively in development. You can install it through Brew. And if you have any issues or anything, just feel free to log an issue on the GitHub repository, and I will answer it and get it fixed. We're using it internally in our own R&D as well as with our DevOps SMEs, and I use it on a daily basis.
Awesome. You know what? We should do a separate episode just to talk about this to teach our customers how to use this in greater detail. Let's move on. We have the next segment of our podcast called You Ask, We Answer, where we've got customers and partners who have given us questions that we'd like to address with our SME like yourself.
Awesome.
So for the first one, we're going to address the easiest one for people who are new to REST API. A lot of them will be using PowerShell. So how should they get started with PowerShell and REST API?
So that's a great question. PowerShell is the most popular language when it comes to dealing with our REST API. And whether that has to do with the ease of entry level, beginner style understanding of PowerShell, or just because we have so much information around the PowerShell side of the house, I don't know. That's a good question to ask our customers. But we have what's called PowerShell modules out there that were created by people in the community, that are maintained by people in the community, and are heavily used in a lot of enterprises today. Pete Mann, who is actually one of our CyberArk champions, is an automation consultant in the UK. And he created a PowerShell module called PSPAS. And PSPAS is really the easiest way of getting introduced to our REST API using PowerShell, which is available on all our Windows laptops that we use in corporations and stuff. If you happen to be running a MacBook or something like that, PowerShell Core is available for Mac, Linux, and it works there too. So even if you're not on Windows specifically, if you have PowerShell Core available to you, you can run PSPAS. It's gotten to a point now over the years of development that PSP is his handle has made to PSPAS. It's become more of a CLI for me than it is a PowerShell module that I use in my scripts, even though you still can. But being able to create a new PAS session with just a couple arguments, being able to get accounts and filter on a safe name with like one line of code, all of these things are super huge. You know, typically if we were going to use a raw method such as invoke REST method, it would take us about 15 lines of code to handle the body, converting that to JSON, sending the request, getting the request back, which is a JSON response, and handling that response. PS Pete has basically made functions that we can consume that does all of this behind the scenes for us easily, and we just need to write one line of code. So going there, he's got a new website, by the way, PSP or pspas.psp.dev. And you can get all of the commands as well as examples and use case information at that website. And you can get started just reading the documentation, seeing what commands you want to do, and then just give it a shot, man.
Thanks, Joe. So I think for folks that are using REST API, there's always a question on where do we get the latest documentation for our REST API?
Yeah, so the official response from me is docs.cyberark.com. And if you click on the CorePAS tile, there's an API icon on the next page that loads that you can click to easily get to the API documentation. There's also a built-in interactive documentation in the PVWA itself. And it's located at password vault /swagger for, I believe, version 10.5-ish and above, maybe 10.6-ish. But if you're on a version above those, you can replace the V10 with Swagger when you go to the login page, and it'll just load you right into Swagger. And that's all of the new V2 API endpoints that are available to you. In the unofficial response from me, there's Postman. I've got Postman documentation out there, and you can run the collection in the Postman API client that you can download. And this is really the easiest way to get up and running with not only the documentation of the API, but also being able to interact with your PVWA using a client without having to know any programming code whatsoever. And then you can take code snippets based on the language you want, just copy and paste them into a script, and you don't even really need to learn programming at any point. So Postman can do it all for you and just spit out the code snippets, and you just copy paste. It's easy peasy.
Personally, I love the Postman page, and I find it's the most native, most interactive, easiest way to learn that. And on
I will mention, sorry to cut you off, just to be clear, Swagger, the official CyberArk one, that shows the V2 API endpoints that are available for your specific version. The Postman documentation is every API endpoint ever. V1 API, V2 API. So you're not really going to get an idea of what works for your specific version by going there. You'll get an idea of everything that's possible.
Nice. Thanks for the clarification. Just now you mentioned V1 and V2 API. Would you be able to educate our users? What's the difference between V1, V2? What's all that about?
Sure. So the differences are simple. The V1 API, we didn't develop in lockstep with the password vault web access. So the features in the V1 API are more for management actions. So if you've ever heard of CRUD, create, read, update, delete, those were the basic actions that we could take on accounts, safes, safe members, any object that existed in the API. And it didn't really expand past that in the V1 API. When we moved into version 10 and started working on a new user interface for the PVWA, that's when we kind of flipped the script and decided that the API needs to come first, and then everything else feeds off of that API. So the same API today in the V2 API that we expose to customers Same API that we need for the Password Vault web access to be able to show its front end and the user interface. All of that information is coming through the API. So today, as you see features introduced into the PVWA, if you have some sort of self-service dashboard that you use for all of your different COTS applications to make it easier for your for your end users to be able to request things, well, you want to rebuild the PVWA in your self-service, go for it. You've got every endpoint at your disposal to be able to do it. So whether you want to use our PVWA or you want to integrate us into your self-service dashboard that you created custom in your enterprise or whatever, the choice is yours.
Interesting you mentioned that because I do have partners in China that literally took our V2 API and built a custom PVWA based on language, based on the user's behavior, what they're used to. And it's widely popular.
Wow. Yeah. So I've seen that quite a few times in the Americas too, where there's a self-service dashboard that they kind of centralize everything under, and they'll just basically rewrite our PVWA up in there. It's pretty amazing what people can do with the V2 API.
So last question. So let's say I'm a total noob into REST API and I want to get started. Where would you direct me? Where should I go to get started?
So to get started, let me share my screen here, and I will take you to a website. So this website is cybr.rocks/greatest hits. And it'll redirect you. It's just a redirection. But it takes you out to GitHub to a gist that I've created. And if you're familiar with the awesome lists that are out there in GitHub, where you have a product and it's like, oh, awesome this, and then it's just a categorized list of links that are great community projects everywhere in one location. That's basically what I've done here. So this is curated, this is updated. If you out there watching this right now have something you'd like to contribute or submit to get placed on this list, feel free to post up here in the comments at the bottom, or get a hold of me through some other means, and we can definitely get you on here. But we have webinars, we have videos. So this YouTube playlist is curated as well. So as I find videos, or as I do workshops, webinars, podcasts, find other things that people have done in CyberArk, I add all of those videos into this playlist for everyone to be able to browse all the CyberArk videos. But we've got a lot of great stuff from the REST API here. If you want the account onboard utility, we've got the link right here. So you can just come here, click the link, and use this as your central jump off point to all of our other community stuff that's out there. We've got a couple contributed things here from Pranav and Joe Arita in customer success. And then down at the bottom, we have the PowerShell module that we talked about a little bit earlier, PSPAS. So that's linked here. You can jump off to there from here. It's just a great place for everyone to go to see like what's new or where everything is from a community perspective, to try and get as much information as possible. So there's a lot of cool stuff up here. I'm not going to go through it all because I want everyone to go through it themselves and explore. And even if you can't use any of these utilities or these tools or these modules, at least you have a template there to get you kick-started on your own development in your enterprise.
So what if we got stuck and we want to ask some questions, right? The webpage is great. So where can we go to ask some questions or talk to people with a similar pursuit?
Sure. So we've got quite a few places actually in the community. From an official perspective, as far as CyberArk Official is concerned, we have a technical community, but currently you need to log in with your account for our support portal in order to access it. Within the next couple weeks, we plan on making that public with no login required. So you'll be able to access the technical community without logging in and begin to browse the different posts and things like that. We've also got a discuss.cyberarkcommons.org, and that is for all of our open source solutions, as well as our dynamic access provider, a forum for you to go and ask questions, to get help from R&D. I'm on there. Other people are on there. And then from a customer community perspective, we've got a lot of other options as well. The main jump off point for that is on Reddit, on our CyberArk. That is a customer-run community, and in the sidebar there on the community are links to the WhatsApp groups that they've created, the Slack server that they've created. So there's a lot of other communication utilities out there where you can just share ideas with customers instead of just trying to get questions, directly to CyberArk and possibly getting stuck in the sales process. Not to say that I don't want you to, but it's not feasible sometimes. And being able to get to another customer who may have been down the road you're about to attempt going down is a lot is a lot better for the experience, the user experience, than reaching out to us who, honestly, it's been 4 years since I was a customer. So I'm not quite having the same experiences as everyone else, like my first year in customer success when I started here. So being able to hook up with other customers is definitely a plus.
Thanks, Joe. So we'll be putting the links to all the resources that you mentioned in the description of this video. And for all the audience that you're watching, if you have other questions you'd like Joe, myself to address in this podcast, please leave a comment and with your questions. With that, I'd like to end this podcast. Thank you, Joe, for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Jeff. Anytime you want me back, you let me know. And everybody smash that like button to let him know to bring me back.
We will definitely have you back. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Jeff.